Hello, hello. So this is going to be a relatively short mystic brew. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Where I live doesn't prevent the TV from being on. Because if anybody's awake in this house besides myself, the TV's on. Anyway, so what you hear in the background, if you can hear it, is the night sounds from my tent when I was living at Omega for 6 months of the year, and I miss that. This is what surrounded me for at least 3 or 4 months of the year. When I arrived, they weren't active, and when I left, they weren't active. But for about 4 of the 6 months, they were, and this was at kind of like the height of the summer. Now, I would say it was probably in August. The katydids had barely started their song. They start really when they kind of announced late summer, fall's arrival. And if you hear any snoring, that's me in the background snoring. I took a recorder, or I guess I put a microphone outside my tent, and just hit record. So anyway, people, I do have a way to private message me, and that's to go to when you go where the videos are on the upper right hand corner, there's a tab that says About, and then there's like very small icons, and one is to report user, and to the right of it is to send a message, and those messages are private. And I used to get notifications from YouTube, but I don't get them anymore. So I've had a couple of private messages being there for weeks, and I'm starting to wonder if maybe some of the thumbs down are coming from people who think I'm ignoring them. So anyway, so it's time to address that. And they're from two people. One person is quite alarmed by what John is saying. They seem to be more alarmed by things that John Lash is saying, rather than what since we're English-speaking people, like let's say what the English-speaking countries have done in places like Libya and the Middle East since the beginning of this century, within the past decade, let's say. For some reason, those things don't concern him, but John Lash talking about magically, in conducting an experiment to magically eliminate some of the problem, seems to alarm certain people. And that's a bit, I feel that's very much of a part of the times, part of the cognitive dissonance of the times, and the split in ourselves. And that split in ourselves also comes from the dominant religions that most of us grew up in. They split us from ourselves also. And so to even hold, to really work with much of what many of us grew up with requires cognitive dissonance to even hold it. If you start trying to connect dots and see how many knots either don't connect, or when they do connect, the story is like, really? So I guess I'm a little caught off guard by people's alarm, especially when there's no body count as far as what John Lash has been saying. But when we look at our own governments and what they've been doing over the past decade, there's a pretty high body count. And if we just do it from the first of the century, we can include the Operation Iraqi Freedom. Man, the body count is astounding in the 21st century. We'll leave the 20th century alone so we can stay out of the tens of millions. But anyway, so I'm going to start. I guess I'm going. Something regarding. I gave pretty good replies to the person who is concerned. For me, and this is. I mean, they're written from a really good place. And he's asking me to check my heart about this, and of course I do my best to live in my heart. But when it comes to any questions, answers for myself, I would think of going to no place but my heart. I don't think my way out of things. I want the wisdom, and you only get wisdom if you're in your heart. So anyway, I'm going to go to these messages, and we'll call this person Mike. And we'll call them Mike because that is not the name that they post with. And I think Mike will recognize the questions. And this way here, it can be there. And for the other person who I'll call Rupert, again, I gave you some pretty good replies there. I actually wrote, yeah, they all got there. One might have, I think I deleted one because it had a really ridiculous typo in it. Or maybe it was somebody else. I replied to a bunch lately tonight. And the interesting thing is once I do the message, I can't edit it because it's been sent. So who knows? Okay, so this is from Mike. So he has, there's 4 questions here. So the first one is, what does a person need to do first to prepare to communicate with Mother Earth? I'll read them all and then I'll answer. Then I'll read them again as I answer them. How can I become more magical myself? How can I find out what I'm really supposed to do here on Earth? 4. What should I forget from my past so I can keep learning from the future? Okay, so number 1. What does a person need to do to first prepare to communicate with Mother Earth? I think the way we set that up is knowing that she's there. But knowing that she's there. And I also think if you really want to start getting make some progress, I think if you don't feel connected yet, I would recommend, it's not an absolute, but boy, it really is the thing to do, is to be in nature if you feel that you're preparing for this. Now, on metahistory.org, which is John Lash's site, he has quite elaborate ritual, if that's what you want to do. And it's a ritual I've kind of half done. But anyway, to prepare yourself to communicate with Mother Earth, I would recommend going into nature. So that you're really, you're sitting on her. I would find a tree to put my back against. Not necessary, but trees are great conduits. And also, if you have your spine against a tree, there's some pretty nice alignment that can happen there. And but for me, there's a psychological, there's a place in our being. So in other words, let's say if you pray, whatever you have prayed to, wherever you have directed those prayers, well, now make that prayer destination Sophia, our mother, Gaia, Mother Earth. Knowing that there is an intelligence in the planet. And in nature, we see that intelligence very well revealed. But when you go inside and do that connection, well, that intelligence gets pretty personal. In fact, very personal. Nobody knows us better than our mother. Although she has some pretty powerful daughters that also know you just as well. I would put Hecate in that category. But so for me, I would go into nature, and if you're a person who does say prayer, make Mother, make her, make Gaia, make Sophia, who you pray, who you talk to in a prayer meditation mode. Now, there is in the ritual on meta history, there is something about you making a little incision on your thumb, so that you kind of have the iron to iron content, that you kind of bleed a little bit into the earth, and say, it's like, here I am, here's my blood. But again, this is your blood that you draw yourself. There's nothing, just enough to get a drop there, a nice little gooey drop. In my case, I was at Omega, and I was looking at this what looked like to be a very nice amethyst candle holder, that kind that held votive candles, like the 10-hour candles. And somehow when I was spinning it, I cut my finger on a really sharp part of the amethyst, and so I saw like a little slit in my finger, and when I pressed it, this big globule of blood popped out, and it was resting on my thumb, and I was barely holding it. So what I did is, because I was at Omega, all I had to do was leave the store, cross a tiny pathway, and I was on the grass. So that's exactly what I did. I took my blood, I went outside, crouched down, put my blood in, and I did a ritual there. It wasn't the ritual that was written, but I didn't have that ritual with me. But I was starting my contacts. I hadn't done my iron to iron with her, which I get that magic of it. And because blood is a very magical fluid, amongst a few other fluids. But again, but the important thing really is it's your blood that you drew yourself. It wasn't against your will, and and I know for me, it certainly kick-started some things. Again, to prepare yourself to communicate with Mother Earth is, again, to open up that spot where you have been going in the past. If Mother Earth, if you were, and basically I had to replace what started out, as the original God we grew up with, and then it got refined, and then it became all kinds of things, and it was a little nebulous. Sometimes it was a father. It was all kinds of things. Once it became Mother, once it became Sophia, once it became VV, which stands for Vajra Vilasi. And John has spoken about that a number of times. It's kind of a sacred name, so it doesn't get spoken of a lot. Generally, we say VV. We, meaning those of us who are kind of deriving, using where John is our Gnostic teacher. We'll make it real simple. John Lash, that is. John Lamb Lash. And I'm just assuming everybody knows, if I say John, they know who I'm speaking of. But I shouldn't assume that and make an ass out of myself. So that, to me, the main preparation is open up that spot that you've been sending any of your requests to. Well, now it has a name, it has an intelligence, and that, to me, is primary. Because it seems like almost everybody has some kind of prayer or communication with a greater being ritual. Well, make that her. Make that Sophia. That is how you prepare to communicate with her, by making her the center of it all. How can I become more magical myself? It's really pretty astounding how just preparing a garden is a profoundly, at least for me, it's always been, even when I was still drinking, which means my pre-gnosis, digging in the garden, I would hear voices, like, well, try this, do this, how about that, and it was the nature spirits. And that, if that's a magical experience. We are by nature magical. That's why when the new systems came in, we're by nature both magical and kind of sexual. And of course, when the new crew came in, the Jovi guys, the demiurge people, what did they do? No magic and all kinds of hang-ups and stuff around sex. It's kind of how you know when they're about, and they have all kinds of issues around that. All magic is black and dark and of the devil. You know the parative, and that's a word I do want to. Parrotive is a narrative that people just parrot because it's not their own thinking, it's what somebody told them. So now they have a program, and when they narrate it, they're really parroting. So they're not really giving us a narrative, they're giving us a parrotive. People who listen to the news and just bring that, when I have an opinion on things in the world, I have multiple sources, and then when somebody asks my opinion, it's my opinion that's a synthesis. I don't parrot. I don't give people a parrotive. I give them my analysis, my own words, my own language. Most people don't do that. So anyway, becoming magical yourself is to just do magical things. And because we're in a magical world, start realizing the dream we're in. We are immersed in a magical environment that is largely no longer obvious because the world that the demiurge and his followers constructed on the world that was built on the planet is a non-magical world. It is made to give you no sense of magic. That's why, again, that's why they created these big city-states where less and less of nature, less and less of the natural world, less and less of magic. So being magic is something, just a real preliminary understanding of that we are magical beings. Magic is the other part of our naturalness. We call it supernatural, but super, like in anatomy terms, means sits above. So basically there's a whole natural world that is of a finer frequency than our five senses normally perceive, and so therefore it doesn't exist from the observer mode. We can't build a quantum field of 3D stuff because we can't observe it, even though it's there. So what sits above the natural and is still equally natural, it's just another part of the spectrum, is what we call the supernatural, and it is engaging with that is often only considered the magic, but working in the earth. I cannot do any gardening without being spoken to. It is impossible, because first of all, you're kind of in your own little meditative state, because you're paying attention to what you're doing, and usually you have your mind fairly quiet, and it's in that fairly quiet space where you can hear what you might think, oh, where did that idea come from? It wasn't an idea, you're being spoken to. And that's clairaudience, and clairaudience is for me, is one of the simplest extrasensory perceptions that we can develop. I think it's actually just waiting for you to accept it, because we get so much incoming. We are receivers. Very little originates right here. Much of it is streaming. So start picking up into that stream, and you will become more magical yourself. Number 3, how can I find out what I'm really supposed to do here on Earth? That's partionosis. So become magical, communicate with our mother, and it'll start becoming. And there's no rush as far as knowing what you need to do. The most important thing we all need to do is don't engage in fuckery. By making the world a better place, through not being a contributor to what makes the world suck. And and from that kind of, it could be just neutral. That you will little by little start coming in, and it might be some of the impulses you had when you were much younger. My return to music is something that started with me at 12. I'm now realizing that many of the years I was involved in music, I was a drunk. no business sense, had no idea what was going on. There's everything from getting the contract business to just having a really good band that a lot of people like, and you get booked, and you create a revenue stream from that. So, to find out what you're really supposed to do here on Earth, first, to me, you ask these questions, a great thing. Connect with Mother, become hers, realize that it's kind of like there are choices here on this earth of who we're going to align with, and I think it's really wise to align with our Creator, and especially one that's present. We have a very unique situation on this planet. There are plenty of humanoid species in this galaxy. They don't have an aeon living with them. They don't have an aeon that turned into a planet. They have planets, part of the canonic planets. We have a very unique situation. And fortunately, we have the demiurge and the archons. Because with gnosis, they're not a big deal. And why would I say fortunate? Can you imagine at least probably thousands of other planets with enough technology to even know what's going on this planet, including also that seeing they were around when the planet formed, and going, what's that? And they have their own mystics. Well, that's one of the aeons turning into a planet. How come we don't have that? Well, this is an anomaly. This was not part of the plan, but it's part of the plan now. Well, that seems kind of unfair. That doesn't seem right. We don't get an aeon. Yeah, but they got that trouble. They got that problem there. Oh yeah, that does suck. All right. I guess this is an okay situation. That's my take on the kind of homeostatic. Everything is kind of okay, except our gnosis. But once we have the gnosis of who the demiurge is, what the archons are, what they do, once we're tuned into Mama, they're less of a problem than mosquitoes at a picnic. Because mosquitoes can, if you turn your back, they can bite you. Once you know what that is and what you are, it's really not an issue anymore. But that'll take some doing, because we have billions of people who are following systems that are tied completely into that system. And I think that also other people on other planets go, wow, man, glad that didn't happen on our planet. I mean, they may have the aeon, but look, that's a pretty rough ride to get there. Have you seen those bombs go off? Have you seen those wars? Holy crap. That ain't human. Yeah, it's from him. It's from that thing. Anyway, and the fourth question, what should I forget about my past so that I can keep learning for the future? This is where understanding the consciousness of the chakras can be helpful. I won't get into that. But the forgettable past will just be forgotten and fall away. The parts of the past that are difficult are the ones that still have trauma in them. In other words, we still have some issues with the past, people in the past, that we haven't settled within ourselves. And they will sit there and groan and moan and trigger you until you get them figured out. And a big part of that is understanding for me, the seats of consciousness between the feelings that can turn into emotions that arise from the second chakra, and the third chakra, which is just mental. It's kind of cold in logic. But they're very interlinked, so they usually just kind of do the circle dance together. That often becomes, the loop that keeps them running in your head. That's your feelings in your mind in an unresolved loop. Your mind doesn't know to ask your feelings what's going on. Like, what is the cause of this? And when you dig, you get different layers. Because sometimes the first answer is the first layer. But then when you ask more questions, you find out that underneath that seeming problem was the root of the problem. And this is inner work that we need to do. So if you're really kind of, the past that you're speaking about is like old traumas, hurts, things like that. They really can be healed. Forgiveness heals them, but you don't want to just forgive and forget. You want to understand, because you need to understand why they were traumas. There's actually a logical, intellectual way of processing feelings, but that's because you give the feelings full validity. In other words, you use your logic as a querent, and then you ask, and then you in your own body, and you're in the body, you feel these feelings. So then you would ask those feelings, what's going on here? And it can come in pictures, it can come in words. You'd be surprised. Get that dialogue going, and you'll be amazed at what happens. And it's not. And again, this is no judgment. It's like, oh, what are these silly feelings? Oh, don't you go there. There are no silly feelings. There are feelings, and those feelings want to be understood. And that's what your third chakra is for, is to understand your feelings. So that's work that we all need to do to get the past cleaned out, and then keep up with the hygiene. First, scrape off the rust, put on the coat, and then kind of manage it. So I think that'll be it for this. This will be a Mystic Brew, and somebody sent me 4 very good questions. I hope my answers were as good as the questions. And I thank you, and let me get to my thing here. How long did I go? 26 minutes? Not too bad. And I think what I'll do is I'll take my face off, give you a few more minutes of the night sound. I'll even turn it up a little bit. And I'll give you this beautiful picture of our mother dreaming herself. I like this artwork and what it's saying about the Sophianic narrative. And we'll turn those sound up a little bit more. And I will bid you all farewell. And may the love of our mother find your heart and stay there.